All right, I am taping. Good morning. It is Monday, the 12th of September. And the first thing I like to do is just, as always, go over the email that I sent out to all of you this morning. And as it says, the first thing I want to do is talk about the homework. Yesterday, I went back and went through the chapters 1 through 3 homework. You all should have something out there right now. If you go out to your inside ranking and you go out to the grades tab. All right. Now, with some of you, you got an email from me yesterday because your homework was, for lack of better words, incomplete. If that's the case for you, it is your responsibility to get that work into me as soon as possible. If you have questions on it, then email me outside of class and I'll be more than happy to work with you on that. All right. Now, since the chapters 4 and 5 homework was due this morning, really at midnight, I guess last night, whatever you want to say, I'm going to be grading that tonight along with your last hands-on test. And I hope to have all that stuff graded and out there by tomorrow morning. All right. Now, a couple people have emailed me and asked about tutors. If you are interested or think that you need a tutor for the class, tutors are provided for free. Now, that is, they are provided for free as long as we can get a tutor. Now, I have 6 people who are in my second year class in the afternoon. And I have sent an email out to them yesterday saying that this email is being sent to basically all of you. And I said, if you have an interest in tutoring, let me know right away. I will bring it up in my afternoon class today. If there is no interest whatsoever, I will contact Mr. Gudmested and ask if he has any people who are willing to act as C# tutors um, electronically from the St. Louis campus. We'll do the best we can to get you a tutor. There is no cost for a tutor. If you think, well, geez, I get this stuff really well, if you would like to try to possibly tutor, it's not like you're going to make a boatload of money on it, but you get $10 an hour. So if you're interested in that, let me know. All right. So as far as that, then what we're going to be doing for the rest of the period today is the first thing I want to do is to go over the GUI calculator app that we created last Thursday. If you remember, we created 3 apps. They were all calculator apps. The first was a console calculator app where everything was put into the main routine. All right. So there was no modularization done. There were no other methods written other than the main method. Then I went back and rewrote it, and it was still a console app, but I added a lot of methods to it. All right. And then finally, we went back and did it one more time as a GUI app. Now, when I did that, I had some problems, but I fixed those and I sent everybody a link. I think it was Thursday evening, sorry, but that has all that stuff in it. If for some reason you can't get to this material, just send me an email and I'll send out the link again. All right. So we're going to, I'm going to go first over a little bit talking about that calculator app. Then we're going to go into the Muroc text and go over chapter 7. I may end up bouncing back and forth between the book and Visual Studio Code. I don't like that really any more than you do, but sometimes when I go over a topic, it's best to be able to explain it in code right away. All right, after we get done with the chapter 7 material, then I'll go over what's going to be due next Sunday, the 18th, for chapter 6 and 7. All right, so I will go over the homework, the labs, and the written tests that will be due. I've changed this up a little bit. Tomorrow, I'm going to go through a few problems. So I said selected lab and homework problems for chapter 6 and 7. So I'll go over a couple of those. Wednesday, I decided to make lab all period because, again, some people are already behind. Thursday will be the pretest for chapter 6 and 7. Friday will be a lab period. All right, so as of right now, your next hands-on test will be next Monday, the 19th. As always, I will email you the test by 8 a.m. and as always, it'll be due by 11:59 p.m. Now, What I want to mention about that though, because it brings up something else. So I've got to change my share here. And what I tried to bring up right now, and hopefully you can see it on the screen, Grant, if you can't, please let me know. But what you should be able to see on the screen right now is the course syllabus. All right. And the reason I'm showing you this is we were pretty much right on. All right. So when we look getting through week 2, which was, and then week 3. So we were on like, again, day 13. Well, now look, now it got a little bit behind already because we're going to do chapter 7 today on day 15. So we're already a little bit behind. Now, is that okay? Yeah, I try to build that in. I basically always think that it's going to take a little bit longer to do certain things than I had imagined that it would. All right. But so if you look today, we're still supposed to be in chapter 7. So that's good. But since I changed this, we're not going to have the pre-test tomorrow and then the hands-on test. That's not going to happen this week. And then chapter 8. So we're already going to be a few days behind. I'd rather do that and have you have an understanding of the beginning material than I would rush through it and have people start dropping or start telling me I don't get any of this stuff. So that's why I'm doing it the way that I'm doing it. All right. I just wanted you to have, basically, for lack of better words, at least somewhat of an understanding of what my mindset is and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. All right. So let me jump into Visual Studio. And again, Grant, you'll have to let me know if you can't, but hopefully what you can see on your screen right now is Visual Studio. And last week, if you remember, we first did this very simple console app, and not that one, of course. But in this very simple console app, what we did was we just wrote everything inside of main. All right, it's not a super long program. It's less than 100 lines. But the point is, everything was done right in main. We put it into an infinite loop, and then we said, enter the first number, and boom, we converted it. Enter the second number, and boom, we converted it. All right. And then we went through here and basically put them in a really simple menu that said put in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Right now. And then as long as if you didn't put in one of those, basically it's going to ask you again. Otherwise, it'll do the result. So if we put in a 1, it'll add, a 2, it'll subtract, etc. I'm not going to read all of them. Then it printed out the answers. So this works fine and dandy, so to speak. If I run this, and let me change my share again. So this runs just fine as long as I don't put anything in to break it. So if I put in here 45 and 12, and I say that I want to do a division, so that's a 4. Boom, it does that, and it even sets it up to 2 decimal places. That's fine. That's great. All right. Now, why am I showing you this? Because if I leave this blank, and hit enter, I get an error message. It goes back to my program. So let me show you this. It goes back to my program, and you've seen this kind of thing before. It says input string was not in a correct format. What does that mean? It means I had a blank, nothing in there at all. And I was attempting to convert nothing to a decimal. Well, that doesn't work very well, as you'd probably guess. All right. So that's one of the things we're going to fix that, so to speak, today. Another thing that we're going to fix, I'm going to run it again. All right. I'm going to change my share again. And what if I come in here? Whoops. I come in here. All right. So what if I come in here now to run this program, and I put in 23 and I put in 0 and I say I want to do a divide. In fact, we'll do a modulus, 5. Again, the program blows up. all right, in its current format. And what it says in here, so let me change my share again. I know I'm bouncing back and forth here. But what it says here is attempt to divide by 0. So this is what happened right here is what's known as an exception. And in particular, it's a divide by 0 exception. All right, the program can't divide by 0. All right, now if you try this program and write something like this in JavaScript, it will divide by 0 and it'll give you infinity. That's not the way that this particular software is built. All right, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do just to show you this and to show you how we're going to start, for lack of better words, fixing things. I'm going to grab everything I've got inside of main. I'm grabbing everything, the entire program here that's inside of main. All right, so let's see, we get 3, yep. All right, so I've just copied everything to the clipboard. Now, I'm going to go to my solution, and I'm going to go to add, new project, and I even if you can't see this, it's no biggie, you know this by now. I'm going to bring in a console application. I want it to be console app.NET Framework, C#. Now I'm going to call this one CH7 calculator console calculator console 01. All right. And we're going to start fixing this, for lack of better words. All right. So now when I put all that in, now I've got a new program and I'm pasting everything in. And right now, if I come in here and run it and don't put anything in, it'll break just like it did before. All right. So should you care? Well, let's talk about yes and why you should. All right. So I'm in here and I'm asking you to enter a number. All right. And if you remember, when we do this, it's either going to work because we put in a number, or it's not going to work because we didn't put in a number. But when you use something like convert to decimal, it assumes that you've got something in there. And it assumes that what's in there is numeric. All right. So it's assuming that, and that's not a good thing to assume. All right. So how can we get around that? Well, there's different ways of getting around that. All right. The easiest way is to come in here and do something like this. Let's make a check. In fact, then we'll do it here. Yeah, we'll do, yeah. So I'm going to say here, if see, enter number 1. Okay. The problem is when we run this by trying to use a convert to decimal, it's doing the convert before we have a chance to do anything. Okay, I want to quickly explain something, and if it doesn't make sense, if you're here watching, please ask. And if you're watching this on tape and you've got a question, please email me and ask. There are basically 3 different ways that you can try to prevent bad code from getting into your program. The first way is what we've been doing so far, and that's to do nothing. All right. When you do nothing, you're typically assuming that whoever is running the program knows what they're doing. All right. That's fine if you're the person writing the program and you're the only person who ever runs the program. That's not usually going to be the case. I call this the ostrich method. It's just my own name. And what I mean is, you kind of bury your head in the sand like the ostrich does and just hope that everything goes on and it's fat and happy and there's no problems. All right. Now, that's not a good way to handle things. All right. The second way is we've done a little bit of this so far, but not too much. And it's going to be much easier to show you this when we look at the GUI version. All right. But that's to use if statements and basically to say if what you put in there is empty. All right. If what you put in there is empty, boom. don't allow it. Well, how would we do that here? We're already doing a convert right here. So we've got number 1, which is a decimal, and number 2, which is a decimal. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make a string, and I'm going to call it number 1 str, and I'm going to make another one here, which is a string, and I'm going to call it number 2 str. Why am I doing this? Because now, rather than converting this right away, I'm going to comment this line out. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say number str equals console dot read line. And that won't blow up because it's a string. But what I can do now is I can check this. So in other words, I can come in here and verify there is something input. How do I do that? I can come in here and say if, and I'm going to say number 1 str dot trim, and I'll explain what that means in just a second. If that's equal to nothing, I know it's empty. All right. So I'm going to put in here, we'll just put in a message. So I'll say console dot write line, you must enter a number, something like that. All right. And then when I get done, I'm just going to tell it to return, period. All right. Now, I'm not sure exactly what that's going to do with the return right there, but we'll see in just a second. Now, what are we doing here? Okay. Well, previously we came in here and we did this. We just assumed that what the user entered was valid. That's not how life works. So we're telling them to enter it in, but rather than entering it in and converting it, we're entering it into a string variable and we're checking the string variable. The trim means if you happen to not put anything in there, but you hit the space bar a few times. Trim removes any spaces at the beginning or at the end of something. So let's say that I put in there space, 37, space. Trim would remove all those spaces before the number 37 and all the numbers after 37. All right, but I'm going to save this. It's always good to do a save. And whoops, let me try it again. File, save all. Let me run it again and see if I broke anything. It at least is running right now. That's good news. So again, let me come in here, change my share. All right. And now I'm going to leave this blank and just hit enter. All right. Still didn't like it. All right. Why? Because it went down. Oh, because I'm running a different program. So let me fix that. Sorry. So let me do a right mouse click and choose set as start a project. All right. And of course, now it's giving me an error. Oh, here's the problem because I'm still using number 1. All right. So let me just take number 1 in there and I'm just going to give it a value. So number 1, I'm just going to say equals 0. That's all I'm going to say, just because that should make that error go away. So let me do a file, save all, and let me run it again.
Can you re-show that? Because
yes, I will.
I don't have anything on the screen share.
Sure. All right. So what I had to do was it was giving me an error because after this while loop, all right, this big, I put a return, but it wasn't returning. It was still going in here and trying to do all this stuff. And all the code in here was assuming that I had a value for number 1 and for number 2. I don't have a value for number 1 or number 2, so I'm just giving them a default value of 0. So that doesn't break. That's all I'm doing. All right, so let me save this. And let me stop the run and start my run again. All right, now I'm going to change my share. Now notice if I put nothing in here and I hit enter, all right, what happened? It just basically came back. The program stopped. That was it. But the point is, it didn't blow up. I'm not sure why it didn't show me my error, but it didn't. It just didn't blow up. Probably because I need a read line here. So let me put a console.readline in. That's all I'm doing. So console.readline right after the thing that says you must enter a number. So let me run it again, change my share because you probably can't see it. So, all right. So if I leave it blank now and I hit enter, you must enter a number. All right, what I'm starting to do is some program validation. That's what I'm trying to get across to you. And if I hit enter again, the program stops, but that's okay. Now I have handled putting nothing in there, for my input. All right, now I still haven't handled non-numeric, so I've got to fix that. All right, so if I get down to here, all right, and let me go back and make sure that you can see what I'm looking at here. All right, so if I get to here, if I get to the else, right there, what does that mean? You should understand something was input. I don't know what was input, but something was input. All right. Again, like I said, I don't know what it was, but you may or may not remember this. But we had something that we looked at briefly, I think chapter 4, that was called try parse. Try parse isn't as literal, so to speak, as a convert. To use try parse, I'm going to need another Boolean variable in here that I'm just going to call result. You can call it whatever you want. And I'm going to set it. In fact, I'm not even going to set it. I'm just going to say bool result. Oh, I already have a decimal result. So bool, how about answer? All right, so I've got this thing in here, bool answer. So rather than coming in here and doing a convert like this, all right, I'm going to come in here and do this. I'm going to say answer equals decimal dot try parse. And what am I trying to parse? In other words, this is what it's asking me. What are you trying to parse? Well, I'm trying to parse number 1 str. And it says, fine, where do you want to put it? I want to put it into number 1. All right. And again, everything I'm working on right here, everything I'm working on, I will save. All right. So let's see. It does not like what I put here. So what is it? Decimal number 1. First of all, that should be an M, because decimal should always have an M in them. All right. So what doesn't it like here? Argument 2 must, oh, I've got to say the word out. Out, number 2. All right. Now, in English, let's just go over what this means. This is telling me to try to take what is in this field right here and try to parse or convert it to a decimal. If it succeeds, it will put it into number 1. If it succeeds, and answer will be true. If it fails, like if I put hello in there, it will fail and answer will be false. All right, so in other words, I can now come in here and say if not answer, all right, which again means I tried to parse this and it failed. All right, I'm going to put the same thing in here I had before. And that is, I'm going to say If that's the case, it's going to still give you an error, and it's going to say, hey, all right, hey, you must enter a number. You entered something non-numeric. All right. But if it does work, now I know I've got a number in there. So I don't even have to do this anymore. I don't have to do this convert to decimal because I already did it up here. All right. And just to prove that, I'm going to put here a console.writeLine, and I'm going to say the value of number 1 is plus number 1 dot toString. All right. And unless I screwed something up, and I don't think I did, this should work. So file, save all. Let me run it again. It's telling me I got an error. Let's see if we can figure out what the error is. I didn't put a semicolon at the end of this line. There it is. All right. Let me do another file save. And let me run it again. All right. I'm going to again come in here and change my screen share. Now, you already saw this. If I leave it blank, it says you must enter a number. But now I'm going to put in something non-numeric and hit enter. And again, you must enter a number. That's good. All right, the program's still going to stop now, but the point is now we've got it set up so our program is going to correctly handle, our program is going to correctly handle us not putting in a numeric input for number 1. So we've now got that done. So enter number 1. We got all this good stuff here. All right. Now I'm going to copy every bit of that. I'm going to copy every bit of this. Input number 2, etc. But I'm going to grab every bit of it that's right here, copy it to the clipboard, and I'm going to replace what's in here with that. So I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to comment this out. Come down here, and I'm going to paste all that in. And why did I do that? Because not only do I want to go in and make sure that number 1 is okay, I have to also go in and make sure that number 2 is okay. Let's change our message here. I'm going to change it so it says non-numeric input. All right, so that's what we'll say when there was something non-numeric inputted. We're just going to say non-numeric input there, and we'll say it here. All right, so we've got non-numeric input. If you put nothing in there, let's change this to nothing input. Because we'll have 2 different messages so you can tell what's what. All right. Now, the program should, unless I missed a semicolon or something like that, the program should run now. And the first thing I'm going to do after I change my share here, the first thing that I'm going to do in here is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make sure that it still works with valid numbers. So 34, 8, and put in here a 2, and it adds them. All right, or subtracts them rather. Good, that's still working. But let's come in here and put in a valid number for number 2, or number 1 rather. All right, but let's leave number 2 blank. Nothing input. That's exactly what we wanted to see. Let me run it one more time. I'm sorry that I have to keep doing this, but I'm trying to get a point across here because one of the most important things that you can be working with and on when you're doing this stuff is to be able to validate data. All right. And that's why this entire chapter that we're working on is an entire chapter on data validation. All right. So I'm going to put in a valid number for number 1. And for number 2, I'm going to put in that. So non-numeric input. So now we have covered all of the cases that if we put in valid information, the program handles it. If we put in invalid information, all right, the program also handles it. This is not a great way, but it works. All right, so I'm gonna even add a little more. So nothing input for number 1. Okay, so we'll just put that in there. And here I'll say non-numeric input for number 1. All right, and here we did say the value of number 1 is, and then we didn't say the value for number 2, so we'll put that in there. So now it will print out the valid value for both. And this will say nothing input for number 2. And this will say non-numeric input for number 2. So now we should have all of this should now be handled. All right. So what if I don't want the program to just blow up like this? You know what I mean? What if I don't want it to blow up? I don't want to do a console.relay and then a return. I think this will work. I'm just going to call main all over again. I think that'll work. Now, it may not, but I believe it will. So I'm going to call main there, and I'm going to call main there, and I'm going to call main here. And let's see, there should be one more. So what am I missing here? Okay, it does not like me calling main like that. I didn't know if it would or not. It's looking for string args. Okay. Let's see. Wonder if I give it a blank array, if it'll take that. Will it take that? Okay. What I want to do is I want to force it. Let's see if a break will work. I want to force it to just run the program again. So I'm going to put a break right there. And I'm going to try a break right there. And I'm going to try a break right here. So let's see if I missed anything. So here is enter number 1. Here is if it's nothing entered. Here is number 1 non-numeric. Here's number 2 with nothing entered. And here's number 2 non-numeric. Let me save that. If this doesn't work, we're just going to head up. We're going to go on. I'll get it to work, but I'm not worried about it. But I'm trying to just not well, but I'm trying to show you or prove a point to you right here. All right, so I'm going to leave it blank and hit enter. Nothing input. And it's just, I'd have to figure out a different way. It's literally breaking right out of the loop. All right, it's going into here. It's going into, because I've got a loop within a loop. What I'm trying to get across, though, is this. Okay, and that is, I'm going to just take it like we had it before. So the program will end right here, but I'm going to put a return here. And I know you probably can't see this. I'll change my share in a moment. And let's see. All right. What we've done, and this is about as crude as it can get, but we have now handled the case that if you come in here and you put nothing in when you're asked to input a first number, you get an error message and the program returns. All right. Otherwise, you come in here and you try to parse it. If when you try to parse it, it fails, you give a different error message and you return. If you get down to here, everything worked. and there was a number. So you print out the value of the number. Then you do the exact same thing with the second number. You verify there was something in it. And if there was not, you give an error message and you return. If you get down to here, there was something input. So you attempt to take what was inputted in there and you attempt to convert it into a decimal. If you can't, you give an error message and you return. If you get down to here, there was a valid number in there. So since there was a valid number up here, and there was a valid number down here, now we can go in and do all the things we're going to do. Enter a 1 to do this, enter a 2 to do that, etc. And again, I'm not saying, hey, does that totally make sense? You know, to understand this stuff, you may have to go back and take a look at what I've just done for it to make any sense whatsoever. All right. But I am going to come in here and I'm going to do a file, save all. And then I'm going to go on to the next program quickly. All right. And I'm going to bring up the second console one. Remember, that one had methods in it. Select operation, determine success, determine result, etc. It had all of that stuff in it. All right. So this one where we came in here, we said input number. Where is input number? There it is. We still have to do that same stuff in here because we're doing a convert dot to decimal. What I am going to do is not in front of you, but I'm going to go back and add the same logic that we had before. All right, the same exact logic that we had before from the previous program. I'm going to put this in here. The reason I don't want to go on is because the majority of the work that we do, the majority of the work that we're going to be doing is going to be on GUI apps. So I want to show how to fix the GUI app. But so I don't forget, all right, I am going to grab and create a new solution. And again, I'll do this and I'll have this out to you sometime today. All right, so I'm going to do another console app, and this will be CH7 calculator console 02. All right, right now it'll be empty, but I'll fill it up in a little bit. All right, so with all that said, let's jump onto the GUI one, which was chapter 6 calculator GUI. First thing I'm going to do is to come in here and set that as my startup project. All right. Now, all this other stuff that's in here, I'm going to close this, not removing it. I'm just closing it. All right. So let me bring up the form. Here it is. When I did this the other day, it didn't work. It works now. Couple things that I changed, just so you hear this. The first thing I changed was I had before number 1, then number 2, then the operation. I put the operation in between the two. So this will say like 43 plus 58. And when you click calculate, it should say 101 there. That kind of an idea. When I ran it the other day, and I'm going to probably, hopefully you can see that on your screen right now. And if you can't, let me know. But when I ran it the other day,
we can't see the program
then,
running.
All righty. Let's see. Do you see it on the screen now?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So right now, the program, I'm not going to press calculate because it will blow up because there's absolutely no code in there to keep it from blowing up. But you'll notice if I come in here and I put in 44 and I don't put an operation in, all right, so I'll put in 33 and I'll click calculate. I've got it now. I get an error message that says you must choose an operation. But if I come in here and I choose minus and click calculate, oh my goodness, give me a flipping break. It says the result is, and it worked. I just did it the other day. Wow. Well, we're going to have to take a look at it because it should be handling it. Let's talk about one thing that's a pain in the butt. This is something we haven't looked at yet. It's a drop-down list. All right. But it's unbelievably difficult to center what goes in here. So this looks pretty poor when you look at it. That's just the way it is. All right. And I'm not worried about that. What I am worried about is the fact that it worked before and it does not appear to be working now. So when I click this, it says you must choose an operator from the list below. Let's see if we can figure out what the problem is. So I will exit right here. Yes, I want to exit. I will go back and change my share. You should be able to see the Visual Studio screen right now. All right, but I want to click calculate. Okay, so all this is doing is it's calling a routine called calculate, which calls this to determine the result. Okay, so let's find determine result. There it is. All right, so again, notice it's just a convert like we did before. We'll have to fix this in a little bit. We will. All right, now this says if there's nothing selected, all right, -1 means that we didn't select anything. And it says you must select an operation to perform. Well, it is not liking what I'm doing here. So let's see. So switch, selected item index to string. All right, it's getting hit right here, even when I enter something that's valid. So this is good, believe it or not, because what it allows me to do is it allows me to show you a little bit of debugging. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click over here in this area, and I just set a breakpoint. So let's see if we can take a look at it and see if we can figure out why this didn't work. All right, so I'm going to run the program. And again, you probably don't see the run now, so let me change the share. All right, now, so I'm going to type in here again 22 and plus 6. All right, and click calculate. Well, now it worked. The result is 28. That's exactly what happened the other day. All right. So let me try something else. Minus. Says you must choose an operation from the box. All right, so let's look. I'm looking in here. You probably can't see this, but I'm trying to see what was selected. It says a zero-based index of the currently selected item. A value of -1 is returned if no item is selected. So for whatever reason, when I do this again, it is not grabbing the value that's in there. That is an error. All right, so let's see if we can fix that. This will be fine because this is going to allow me to come in and show you a boatload of stuff. All right, so let me go back, change my share, and we should be back in Visual Studio. I'm going to remove this. All right, so when we determine the result, what do we want to do here? We're calculating, and literally, what do we want to do here? Well, I put in a bunch of comments on purpose. This method determines the result. If no value is entered into the drop-down list, an error message box is printed out and the method returns. That's this. All right, but for whatever reason, even when I'm selecting something, the selected index, that's just the number of the thing that we selected. All right. So in here it said enter operation, that's 0. The plus sign is a 1. The minus sign is a 2. the multiply sign is a 3, the divide sign is a 4, and the modulus sign is a 5. That's what should be coming up from in here, but if for some reason it doesn't like it. All right. So if the operation selected, I'm going to just say here, is less than or equal to 0, because if it's 0, it just says enter operation. So you must enter an operation. All right, so if that's the case, that's fine. Otherwise, whatever we put in there, okay, should be okay. So I want to see if we're getting into this thing right here. All right, I probably made this program much, much too complicated. I tried to take something like, like a simple calculator, and I wanted to be able to show you how to create something with it. And like I said, maybe I failed in that respect. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to set a breakpoint right there. I'm going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to run the program again. All right, which means I have to change my share so you can see what I'm running. So again, I'm going to put in here, change that to a plus sign, 12. It did stop right here, so don't worry about that. All I'm trying to do is get the value of this. And it says the value of the selected item was a plus sign. All right, so it says that it's 35. That's good. That's exactly what it should do. Now, where it seems to be slipping up is if I come in here and change it again, like to a, and I click calculate. All right, then it's coming back in here again. It's saying it's a multiply. It says you must choose a value. And it didn't. Even though it, according to this, it was a multiply sign, it's not accepting it. So I think what I must do is I must go back, and after you've done an operation, I must change that back to enter operation again. I guess you're going to have to change it. You can't just do this and then change it to this and keep changing it and keep changing it. You should be able to do that. See, now that did work, but let's see if I do it again. Let me get rid of this. Okay. So if I come through here and say 23 plus 35, 23 minus, and it's not doing it. So something, maybe it's the minus sign. We'll have to look at that. Nope, it's not the minus sign. All right. So what I'm going to do, and we're going to take a break right now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this. So every time it gives you an answer, it's going to reset this back to enter operation. So you'll have to manually reset it every time. All right, so give me a second here. Clear this, exit. It is 8:55. Let's please come back at 9:05. All right. Right. I'm back. Now, Grant, you're the only one on right now, so let me just ask you this. Does what we're doing basically make sense to you, or does it not make sense? And please be honest.
Yeah, this has been really helpful
Okay.
for me.
What I want to do though, and I'm not trying to retard your growth here, but my guess is some of the people who are in here, especially some of the ones who have contacted me about tutors, are going to be very confused about this. So, good, bad, or indifferent, during the break, I decided to do this. And that is, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add a new project. And you're going to see what I'm doing and why I'm doing it in just a second. All right. And I'm going to call this, how about Chapter 07 Simple GUI. It's going to be a GUI app. All right. It's going to be very, very, very simplistic. I'm not going to worry right now about doing things like setting tab order and doing all that other stuff. You've already learned how to do that stuff. I will change the color just because I hate that color. All right, but I'm going to make this real simple. All right, I'm going to come in here, and the first thing I want to do is I want to bring up my toolbox. All right. And like I said, this will be a really, really simple interface. As always, it'll have our 3 buttons on it. So our calculate, our clear, and our exit buttons. So it'll have those 3 buttons on here. All right, very similar to what we've been doing in the past, okay? Now, what's going to change is I'm going to have 2 labels. All right, this will be my first one in just a moment. All right, I'm going to copy that, and that'll be my second one. And I'm going to have 2 text boxes. A lot bigger than I need, but that's fine. All right, then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to, as always, I'm going to resize everything so everybody can see it okay. Okay, so my interface should be done. All right, and I'm going to, like I said, I want to do this quick. So this will be BTN calculate, and it will say calculate. This will be BTN clear, and it will say clear. And finally, this will be BTN exit, and it will say exit. I'm not going to worry about making the clear button and the exit buttons functional right now. I'm not worried about it. All right, you know how to do that. We've done that multiple times already. So the calculate button will work in a minute, but I'm not going to worry about these 2. All right, this one is going to say just LBL, enter number, and the text on here is going to say enter a number. All right, make that a little wider. Okay, and this second one that's right in here, this one is going to be called LBL status. You see, I don't know what that means. You will know in just a minute. So LBL status, and I'm going to put it in here for a heading number status. Okay, now, so this is done. That's done. Let's change these 2 names and then we'll put some code in here. So this will be,
Could you swap your screen real quick?
sure. Let me just change, I'm just gonna make this TXT status, and this will be, this will be TXT enter number. I promise I will in 10 seconds. All right. All right, you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So very simple interface. All right. And what I want to do in here is I want to set this up so that when I enter a number into here and I click calculate, this either says odd or it says even or it says 0 is neither odd nor even. So hopefully the idea behind it is fairly simplistic. All right. But I want to be able to handle it if there's nothing there. I want to be able to handle it if there is something non-numeric there. So it's very similar to what we talked about before, but it's I basically I'm not going to say dumbed it down, but I made it, I think, simpler to comprehend. All right. You'll tell me later if I did or did not. So when I calculate in here, what do I want to do? Well, what do I want? The first thing I'm going to need is a number. So I'm going to say decimal number. I'm not going to set it equal to anything, but that's going to be the number. That number is going to be the number that I put in here. All right. Okay. So I'm going to have a decimal for a number, and I'm going to put in here a string. And I'm going to make it number str. You can call these anything you want. All right. But what I'm going to do, this isn't a calculate routine. So I'm going to go and check first. I want to make sure that I'm inputting something valid. So what I'm going to do is this. I've got this string and this. So I've got string, number string, that's fine. So the first thing I want to do is input the number. And to make this simpler, I'm going to just make these global. That's not a good policy, but I'm going to do it because otherwise I'm passing stuff and doing way too much junk. All right. So I'm going to call input the number. It's giving me an error because I don't have a routine that's called input the number. So let's write that. Private void input the number. All right. I now have no errors. Okay. So number string and number string is what I put in here to start with. That's number str. When I attempt to convert it, if it's successful, it'll go into number. All right. So I'm going to come in here when it says this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to say if txt, I guess I didn't rename them, so let me double check. Thought that I did. I did not. So that's txt enter number. All right. And this is txt status. I should change the name of my form too, because as you know, it's just good policy. So rename FRM, I'm going to call it odd or even. And yes, I want to change everything. Let's double check to make sure I've renamed everything. And it looks now like I have. Okay, so I'm calling input the number, and I'm going to say here, if txt number, enter number, I guess it is, enter number dot text, if it's dot trim, if it's equal to nothing, what do I know? Well, I know literally there was nothing put into the text box. All right. So show a message and stop the program run. There's no sense in going on. So if there's nothing in there, I'm going to do a message box dot show and say no input provided. And I'll put the same thing in there. That'll be my text. And I'm going to say no input. Boom, boom, boom. All right. And we will put in here message box buttons dot OK and message box icon dot error. All right. And it's easiest as I build this incrementally to basically not do anything else. I'm just going to do this right here. So I'm going to say return, just like that. Okay, now I'm not done, of course, but notice now if I put, whoops, got to reset my program. So now if I run this and I'll change this so you can see the run. All right. Now if I put nothing in here and I click calculate, I get no input provided. That's exactly what I want to have happen. Okay. And basically I'm dead in the water. I can keep running it. And if I put something in it now, nothing happens, but that's okay. That's exactly what I wanted to have happen. All right. So I have now handled the case. I have now handled the case of there being no input whatsoever. All right. So handle case of nothing in text box. Okay. So I've done all that stuff and now I returned. So I'm going to put an else in here. So what you should get and what you should all be able to understand is now there was something in the text box. All right, it has to be because if there was nothing, I caught it here. So there was something in the text box. Now verify that what was input was numeric. Okay, so I want to make sure I've checked for it being empty. Now I want to make sure it's numeric. Okay, well, I'm going to need another one of those things to do a try parse. So I'm going to need another Boolean. I'm just going to call it result. Okay, and I'm going to say here result equals decimal. Did we make this a decimal? I don't even remember. Let's make it an int because it's easier to divide a whole number. So we'll say here int. Okay, and instead of decimal dot try parse, I'm going to say int 32 dot try parse. What am I trying to parse? All right, what am I trying to parse? Number string. All right, if it works, where do I want to put it? Number. All right, number str. And if it works, I'm going to put it in the number. Now, if this fails, I put something non-numeric in here. If this fails, I put something non-numeric in here. So I'm going to grab and just steal this code here. And I'm going to come down here and say, if not result, meaning I had non-numeric input. All right. Now I'm going to say non-numeric input provided. All right. So coming in here, I've checked for no input. If there was, I give a message that there's no input. Boom, I go on. Then I check for non-numeric input. So this handled the case of nothing in the text box. This will handle the case of non-numeric value in the text box. Let's see if that works. So file, save all. I will change my share again so you can watch. All right, with nothing in there, no input provided. Good. With something non-numeric in there, non-numeric input provided. So it appears so far as though it's working. That's all I can ask for. All right. So let me change my share one more time here and get this program finished. So if I get down to here, if I do get down to right here after the else, numeric input was provided, period. I know that. All right. So what I want to find out is if it's odd or even. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to divide it by 2 and check the remainder. If the remainder is, you know, is 0, it's an even number. If it's 1, it's an odd number. So I'm going to call this int, I'll call it what it is, remainder. All right. So when I get down to here, I'm going to say this, remainder equals number 1 modulo 2. All right. If remainder equals 0, then I want to put in, oops, number 1, what it doesn't like, does not exist in the current context. No, oh, it's just number, not number 1. Okay. So if it's equal to 0, I want to say txt status dot text, and I want it to say equals the number is even. Okay. Else, I'm going to say that the number is odd. All right. Let me save it. Let me run it and make sure it works. And then we'll come back and go through the entire program. So give me a second here. Oops. All right. So nothing, no input provided, non-numeric. All right, non-numeric input provided. All right, I'll clear that and do all that stuff. I don't care right now. But if I put in 57, says non-numeric input provided. Well, that ain't good. Let's debug that right away. So non-numeric input provided. I know what the problem is, but we'll fix it right now. All right. So if I got down to here and it worked, it really should have done this in 32, and it should, number should have the value in it. I don't know if I should do a regular int try parse there or not. Nope, doesn't like it. So int 32 try parse. Result equals that. Remainder equals number if remainder. Well, we tried to parse it. We're putting the output in the number, which is this. All right. Number modulo 2. I want to just see the error one more time. Non-numeric input provided. So this is getting hit, even with if what we're putting in there is valid. So all right, so let's come in here and I'm going to put a message box dot show. I'm doing a little debugging on the fly here, and I'm going to say number str equals plus number str. plus backslash n number equals plus number dot to string. All right. Stats. All right. Now, don't worry that you can't see this. I just want to see what is printing out. So 56, and it says number string has nothing in it. That's why this is failing. Okay. All right, here's the problem. So if this works, boom, else there was something in the text box. All right. Number string is equal to txt enter number dot text. That's the problem. It was never getting set. So let's try that again, just to double check. It is now correct, and it says that 55 is odd. So let me save it. I'm going to run it again. I want you to see the run. All right, so if I come in here and put in nothing, no input provided. If I come in here and put non-numeric, okay, non-numeric input provided. If I come in here and put in 56, number 56 is even. If I put in 57, it says the number 57 is odd. All right, and that's fine. The only one thing I don't like about this is if I put in 0, it says the number 0 is even when technically it's not. So I'm going to fix that right now. All right. So let me jump back into the program here. All right. So let's see. Before I even do this, numeric input was provided. I'm going to say if number equals 0. So literally, if what we put in there was a 0, I'm going to say it, change the message here, and it's going to say the number 0 is neither odd nor even. All right, and I'm just going to return because I'm done. Otherwise, I'll do the math. So now I should be handling it. If I put a 0 in there, also it should just give me that 0 is neither odd nor even. Let's run it. I will again change my screen share. Whoops, change my share. Come on. And now if I put nothing in there again, non-numeric provided. If I put in junk, well, that's non-numeric. The other one said if it was empty, it said no input provided. If I put in 66, it says even. If I put in 67, it says odd. If I put in 0, it says the number is 0 is neither even, I should have said odd nor even. Okay, so now that's all handled. All right, that's good. So let me go back. I'm not going to do any more with this program other than walk through it line by line and hopefully explain it. And Grant, you probably get it, but I want to make sure that other people who are watching understand it as well. So I'm going to come in here and make this a little bigger. All right, that should now hold that. All right, so. All right. So when we calculate, we call input the number. All right, I've got the wrong program up here, don't I? No, this is it. Okay, so what are we doing in here? Okay, this result, that's going to be us trying to make sure that what's in there is numeric. Result will be true or false. True meaning the number that was put in there, the value that was put into the text box was numeric. False meaning it's not. Remainder is if I've got a number and a number is not 0, I'm going to modulo it by 2. And if it returns 0, it's even. If it returns 1, it's odd. So we come in here and we handle the case of nothing in the text box. We say if basically there's nothing in there, we just give the user a message that says, hey, no input was provided, and we return. So if we get down to here, we can be 100% assured something was put in there. We don't know yet what, we don't care yet what, but something was put in there. I don't need this anymore. All right. So what do? Well, number string is equal to what we put in the text box. Did I need to do this? Did I need a number string? The answer is no. I could have taken this value, txt number.text, and put that in here. Would have saved me a line of code. All right. I don't know if that would have been a good thing or a bad thing, but that's this. I did it the way I did it. So we are attempting here to take what the person put into the text box, the top text box, which is called txt enter number, and we're attempting to see in that line that's in blue in line 50, can we convert that into an integer? If we cannot, we give a message saying what you put in there was not numeric. All right, and we return. So if we get down to here, numeric input was provided. In fact, I'm going to change that to say integer input was provided. All right. Then we come in here and we check if it's 0, if number in text box was a 0, print not odd, not even message, and return. Okay. So if we get down to here and int other than 0 was input. Okay, so we do this. If we get that, remainder of 0 means number was even. A little redundant because I've already got that line saying it in just a second. Remainder of 1 means the number was odd. Now, the reason that I did this is I'm thinking that the example that I gave you with the calculator might have been a little bit too complex. So I tried to give you something easier so that hopefully it would make some sense to you. All right. Now, I want to show you one more thing, and then I'm going to jump into the Muroc book. All right. But before I do that, you look on your screen right here. Hopefully, Grant, you can see the screen and you can see the program up here. If I click inside of the first text box, in fact, I can click on any control that's on here. It doesn't matter if it's a label, a button, or a text box. But the ones we're going to be concerned with now are going to be the text boxes, and especially that text box right there. Okay, if I go down here into my properties window, you see there's a thing in here. We've looked at text before. You know what the text is. If I put hello in there, the word hello would appear right here. I don't want to do that. But right above that, there's a thing called tag. And tag is basically a way we can tag this. And what I mean is, I'm going to put in here number. Nothing magical happens. Nothing magical happens on the program. But now I can refer to a tag of number in my program code. And if you say, I don't get it, that's in chapter 7. We're going to look at it in just a moment. All right. But I just wanted to show you that before we do anything. All right. Now I've got to remember that what I want to do during the break is I want to go back, make the clear button work, make the exit button work, set my tab order, etc. And the reason for that is I can't be expecting you to do this all the time if I'm not doing it myself. All right. So file, save all. And let's get into, I'm going to change my share back in just a second. All right. Hopefully what you can see on your screen right now, Grant, is it says contents right here. And we're looking at the book. Hopefully that's what you can see. And I'm going to jump right into chapter 7, which starts on page 195. We've already, believe it or not, started to get into this. What I mean is you've already seen a little bit of exceptions, but I showed you one way of writing exceptions. In a minute, I'm going to show you another way. All right. And we've also started to look at validating data, but we're going to look in more depth and breadth of coverage of validating data. And that will involve the use of, again, that tag attribute that you saw previously. So let's jump into this. As always, as I'm going into this, if you have questions, please stop me and ask me. All right. Now, this says an introduction to exceptions. And I've given this example in other classes before, but I'm going to say it to you as well. Let's assume that you are a brand new father. Okay, your spouse has, or you're a brand new mother. Your spouse is, you just had a kid. So kid's a couple days old, you put the kid in a stroller and you're walking it through the park. And somebody comes up to you and says, oh, wow, baby, can I look? And they look at the baby and they go, wow, what an exceptional child. Now you're probably going to say, thank you. Because when most people think of something being an exception or exceptional, they kind of think about it in a good way. Programmatically, an exception is a bad thing because it's an exception to the norm. All right. You've already seen some exceptions. I showed you an example in that calculator program when I tried to divide by 0. That was the system throwing an exception. You can also throw your own exceptions. We're going to look at that in just a bit. All right. But an exception is, in programmatic terms, is not a good thing. All right. Now, when you work with these, you work with something we have not seen before, and it's called a try-catch mechanism. What does that mean? Well, let me look right here. So I think it's going to be shown right here. I'll jump back again, but I want to show it to you. Let's see. I thought they gave an example, and there it is. Okay. What this means, if you look at the code right here, what you put inside of the word try in the curly braces, you put code in there that can conceivably fail for whatever reason. All right. If that code fails, you jump down and try to find something in the catch and you run that code. All right. What am I even talking about? Well, notice here, we're doing that convert to decimal. But notice what they put in there. They put the letter X in there twice, which the convert will not work. But as soon as it tries to do this line and that line fails, it jumps down to this catch right here and it says, please enter a valid number for the subtotal field, like that. And when you click OK, it'll allow you to do it again. What I'm showing you right now is another way that you can handle invalid data, which is not doing nothing and which is not using if statements, which is what we've been doing so far. All right. So let me jump back again because I want to take this from the beginning. All right. So as it says there, a well-coded exception will catch things that can go wrong and handle them. If you handle them yourself with try-catch statements, you are writing a program that is utilizing what's called exception handling, exceptions to the norm. All exceptions in this language are part of the exception class. And you're like, okay, what the heck does that mean? Well, if I try doing something arithmetic on non-arithmetic values, so on non-numbers, I can get an arithmetic exception. If I try to divide by 0, I get a divide by 0 exception. If I say the biggest something can be is, let's just say 1 to 10, and I put in 500, I can get an overflow exception. So exceptions, again, are exceptions to the rule. You've seen this exception already. Input string was not in a correct format. That is a format exception. Because you were trying to do something in a certain way, the program was expecting something in a certain way. You did not write it that way. You broke the rules. When you break the rules, the software is designed basically to shut your program down, unless when you break the rules, you handle it. All right. So again, let's just assume that we've got a form that we created, and it asks for your name and it asks for your age. Well, you put your name in and now you leave your age blank, or you put in something non-numeric. All right. If the system is expecting there to be a value in there and it's expecting that value to be numeric, all right, the program will blow up if you put something non-numeric. Also, what we're going to look at in just a little bit are range values. So if it's asking for your age, technically, if you're just born, your age is 0. And I don't think anybody has lived more than 125 years. So if I said in there, if the age, the number that you put in there for the age was less than 0 or it was greater than 125, that's also an error. But that would be a range error. All right, so we could throw some kind of a range exception. So there's all sorts of different exceptions that you can throw. I'm not going to do this, but if I opened up another window in the browser here, went out to docs.microsoft.com and searched for exceptions, I could find a list. Or if I just Googled, for example, C# exceptions. All right. Now, I do want that, it made me think of something. There's a few people in this class who basically email me on a regular basis. We'll leave it at that. You know who you are, and it's totally fine. That's one of the reasons I'm here. But a couple of you have said, I so often have a hard time getting started. Just the stuff that you consider basic, I don't consider basic. All right. And I am going to bring up another window here in the browser. And what I'm going to say is, what you might want to do is you might want to go out to w3schools.com. The letter W, the number 3, schools.com. Hit enter. Pretty generic, bland looking thing. But if you go to tutorials, you'll notice they have a tutorial here under programming for Learn C#. Oh, I grabbed the wrong one. Sorry. Try that again. There it is. C# tutorial. There's all these lessons over here, and there's examples and everything else. So if you think to yourself, I really want to get this stuff, and I'm just so hosed here, I don't understand why stuff isn't working. All right. This is a good place to go. It's just w3schools.com, and then you just check under tutorials for C#. All right, enough. So we come in here and it talks about some of the exceptions that you can get. Now, this is kind of a hard diagram to read, so let's go over it. All right. All exceptions are a type of exception. Okay. Then there's a format exception. What's a format exception? All right. When it's expecting things to be formatted in a certain way and you break the rules. We're going to look at those after our next break. What's an arithmetic exception? There's several kinds. Here's two of them. One is an overflow, one is divide by zero. The bottom line is this. There are probably somewhere between 20 and 100 different exceptions in the C# language. You don't need to know most of them, but you need to know what happens so that when you write code and that code can potentially break, and if you are told to handle that broken code by using exceptions, you've got to be able to do that. So notice that when you do a convert like to 2 decimal or whatever, or even a parse, this isn't a try-parse, this is a parse. Look at the different kinds of errors that you can get. All right, you're going to see some of these as we go on. So, how to display a dialog box? Guess what? You know how to do this already, because we have been using messagebox.show all semester. And that's what they're showing here. So I'm not going to go through this because I think you all know how to do this. All right. So how to use structured exception handling. I'm going to go 8 more minutes until 5:02, then we're taking our second break. As it says, to prevent your app from crashing due to runtime errors. What's a runtime error? It's an error that happens while the program is running. You can write code that handles exceptions when they occur. Again, exceptions to the norm. There are things you don't want to have happen. This is known as structured exception handling. So again, you end up using a try-catch. This is not a well-written try-catch right here. After the break, we're going to look at several of them, and I'm going to write some that are better than what's in here. This is just, there's nothing wrong with this one. It's just very simplistic. All right. So in the try, you put a set of curly braces and one or more statements that can possibly fail. In the catch, you put curly braces and one or more statements of, hey, if what happens in the try fails, what do I want to do with it? That's exactly what we're saying right here. So try to do all this stuff. If we try to do this line and it succeeds, and we do this line and it succeeds, and we do this line and it succeeds, and we do this line and it succeeds, you totally skip the catch and you just go on with what comes down below. If you try and let's say this fails, this first line, you never do these other 3 lines. You jump right down to here, and what you do next depends on how you write your code. All right, but you can't. So if I've got 4 lines in here and I get through the first 2 and this thing poops out on the 3rd line, I can do whatever I want down here, but I cannot jump back up here again. That doesn't work. It doesn't, you're not allowed to do that. So as it says here, you can use a try catch to code what's known as an exception handler. You create a try block around that code that can possibly fail. You code a catch block to put in those statements to make sure that when an exception happens, you handle it, not that the program does. All right. The exception is part of what's called the exception class. It's got a couple things on there that can help you. A message and a stack trace. The message is the message the system gives you to show you what happened. You can put in your own message, or you can use the system message, or you can put in your own message and the system message. The stack trace is a little harder probably for you to understand. Give you my tried and true quick little definition of a stack. Maybe in high school, I know it happened like this with me, we had a cafeteria and you'd have trays that you'd go put your food, your plate on with your food, etc. When the cafeteria worker came in and put in a whole bunch of trays, boom, they pushed them down into a spring-loaded mechanism and boom, you grab the top one. That's what a stack is. It's called last in, first out, or LIFO. So the last thing in there is the first thing that you grab. So what does that have to do with anything? With a stack trace, it shows you all of the methods that were called from the last one called to the first one called. Is that something you'd use? Probably not at this stage of your career. All right. But it's something that can come in very handy when you're debugging. So if we look at this, here's an example. We're trying to do this. If it fails, what are we printing in here? The type, all right, and the message rather. Okay, that's input string is not in the correct format. The type, and that's going to be the first thing that says down here, and then the backtrace to show you what was called. Now, I'm probably making it sound harder than it is, not on purpose, but if you've never looked at it before, it's a little daunting, for lack of better words. All right, so we're going to look at examples of this. Typically, when you catch exceptions, you catch different types of exceptions, not a generic just catch like they showed before. So there's a format exception and an overflow exception and just a catch with an exception. When you do this, you go from most specific exception to the next most, to the next most, finally at the end to the least most. What I mean is this is more specific than this, which is more specific than this. If I put this catch exception, this one, at the top, the other ones would never get hit. This, you put your most generic, all right, exception at the bottom. Again, I'm going to assume you don't understand that. So we're going to talk about it after the break. All right. Then you'll notice something we have not discussed before. That is this. Finally, if your try succeeds, if all of these succeed, you skip the catch and you go right to the finally. If the try fails, you find the catch that matches it, you do that code, and you go to the finally. So the bottom line is the finally block runs whether the try works and you skip the catches, or the try fails and you do a catch. All right. You typically use that for what's called housekeeping and cleanup type of information. So if you have a file open, you can close it there. If you have a database open, you can close it there. You go, I don't know what those are. We don't cover files till chapter 17. We don't cover databases till chapter 19. So you're not expected to. So chances are you probably won't have a finally block in yours. All right. Very quickly, because it's 9:53, I'm giving you a break in 2 minutes. You can throw your own exception. So you can throw an exception. Why would you want to do that? Let's imagine for a second that I was writing a program that was going to figure out miles per gallon. Maybe we'll do that after the break. All right. So we'll do a miles per gallon program. And let's say that you said that the minimum number of miles that somebody could drive was 0, and the maximum number they could drive was, I don't know, 1,000. Well, if you wanted to throw your own exception, if they put in a bad value, you could use one of these throw statements. So you're going to see that after the break. All right. So when do you throw an exception? When you handle a situation that the program is not designed to handle. All right. When you want to catch an exception, perform a processing, and do it again. You're going to see all these after the break. All right. So rather than go on to this future value thing, which is next, it is 9:55. Let's take 10 minutes and come back at 10:05. When we do, I'm going to write a very simple miles per gallon program. I'll see you then. All right, it's 10:05. The first thing I did during the break here, actually, the last thing I guess I did during the break was I typed into Google C# exceptions, and I'm going to go down. There's a lot of places, but I found this one, built-in exception classes in C# from Tutorials Teacher. All right. Why? Because this has got a picture. These are the major exceptions that you're going to see. Now, I don't expect you to look at that and understand it. It's totally fine. All right. But that said, I want to write a program that's going to have a few of these things in there. All right. So when we look at it, like I said, there's a lot of different, this has got a big listing. All right. But the ones I'm going to concentrate on right now, let's see. Argument exception, argument out of range exception, divide by zero exception, those three, and probably format exception. All right. So we'll look at those four types of exceptions. Again, there's a lot more, as you can see, but I'm going to keep that thing open so I can come back to it if I want. And I'm going to come in here. I'm going to change my share. And I'm going to go back into Visual Studio as soon as I can find it. There we go. All right. And I'm going to keep this one open so I don't forget about it later. But I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a new project. It will be a Windows Forms app, and I'm just going to call it CH07MPG GUI. It's going to be a miles per gallon program. It's going to be a very simplistic one, but it'll allow me to show you a few things in here. All right. And as always, as we're going through this, if something does not make sense, please, by all means, ask. Okay, we'll put in our standard 3 buttons. All right, we're going to have 3 text boxes and 3 labels. Let's just put in the text boxes first. All right, I'll move them here. That looks like it'd be about right. And make it a little wider. How about that? That looks good. It's about right. And 3 labels. All right. And set the auto size. All right. Let's see. This will be the result. This one could be bigger, so I'm just going to make that bigger, even though it makes my interface look a little weird. And let's lock this. All right. This will be LBL miles driven. And we will give it text of miles driven. All right. This will be LBL gallons used. And it will be called gallons used, or the text will be gallons used. Guess I need to make that a little wider, so let's do that. Okay. And then finally, this one will be MPG, or miles per gallon. All right, so that's all done. This will become quickly TXT miles driven, TXT gallons used, and TXT miles per gallon. TXT MPG, because that's what I call the other one. All right, this will be our calculator, calculate button. This will be clear. And this will be exit. And again, just like with the last program, it'll be my responsibility to make the exit button and the clear button work. But for now, we're not concerned with those. We're just concerned with the calculate button. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to come in here and I want to look at, all right, I want to look at, I want to say, let's see, let's make 3 variables. So we will have a decimal that's called miles driven. And we'll have another decimal that's called gallons used. And I am going to take each one of these and initialize them to 0. Okay. And then the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm not going to worry about writing a lot of modules in here. I'd like to have everything, keep this as complex or as simplistic as possible. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, let's see, if txt miles driven dot text dot trim, if there's nothing in there. So if it's equal to nothing, remember this is the calculate. I'm going to throw an argument exception. Okay, don't worry, we'll go over all the code here, I promise. All right. Well, how do I want to handle that? How about if we do this? Let's make this a try. All right. This will say miles driven equals convert dot to decimal txt miles driven dot text. And you know already, because we've looked at that, that can fail. And then we're going to say gallons used is equal to convert dot to decimal txt gallons used dot text. And again, that can possibly not work. All right. Then I can say I need another decimal here. That's going to be my miles per gallon. Again, I'm trying to keep this simple. So I'm going to say here MPG equals miles driven divided by gallons used. All right. And then finally, txt mpg dot text equals mpg dot toString and 2. Right? Now you'll notice I get an error here because you can't have a try. It's expecting one or more catches. So I'm going to say here catch. And the first thing I'm going to catch is an argument exception. Usually when I do mine, I give them a little name. So I'm going to call this AE. All right. And if it finds an argument exception, what do I want to do? I want to print out what it says. So I'm going to say here, message box dot show. I'm just going to print out the system message, set add message. All right, so if that's the case, I'm going to print that out and I'm going to clear out. I'm just going to return. That's fine. Now, if it's not that, what if it's a format exception? I'm going to do the same thing, but there are two different types of exceptions. So I'm going to print it out and return. And for right now, that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to add some more to it, just a little bit. Fix that. That should say FE. All right. Now, what I'm doing in here, this is my interface. I'm expecting there to be a number here and a number here. If there is a number in both of these, okay, and I click calculate, it should divide this number by this number and put the result here. Okay. All right. So if that's the case, then it'll work just fine. So in other words, if I run this, whoops, someday I'll remember. So if I come in here and run this, and I'll probably have to change my share so you can see it. And I put in this, and I went 100 miles, and I used 4 gallons. 25. That works. Good. That's perfect. All right. Now, if for some reason, I'm going to change my share again, because I was just thinking, now this isn't, it's going to look a little funky for just a second, but just bear with me if you would. If this doesn't work, if I get one of these exceptions, rather than doing a message box, why don't I just put it inside of here? All right, so that's what I'm going to do. Instead of that, I'm going to say txt mpg dot text equals ae dot message. All right. So if I've got some kind of an error, I'm just going to put it right in that text box. All right. Now that's going to be an F again because I copied it. There we go. So let's run it. And I'm not going to put anything in there now. I'm going to leave this empty and I'm going to click calculate. Input string was not in the correct format. So you've seen that. Okay. Let's run it again. Input string was not in the correct format. Okay. So I'm not sure exactly which of those errors it's throwing, but it's throwing one of them. All right. So hopefully that made sense. Now, what if I do this? If I run it and I put in 0 for the gallons used, I get another error, attempt to divide by 0. I didn't account for that error. So I'm going to do that right now. All right. So now if I attempt to divide by 0, what's going to end up printing in here? What did it? Oh, So now, and I'm not going to keep changing, but I am going to put a 6 in there for my miles driven and a 0 for my gallons used. I click calculate and it says attempted to divide by 0. So I'm handling my error cases in here, is what I'm telling you. This is what I am trying to do. All right. So what if I come in here and add one more thing? I'm going to add a couple constants. And I'm going to say const decimal min miles. You have to at least drive a mile. Const decimal max miles. Let's just say that we've got it set up so the most you can drive is 1,000. I'm making those up. It doesn't really mean anything. All right, and let's do the same thing with gallons. So I'm going to say const decimal min, just call it GALLS, gallons. So that's 1, and const decimal max gals, and that's going to be equal to, I don't know, 1,000, let's say 50. Again, I made those numbers up. They have no significance. But what I want to say in here is if I do all this stuff, okay, so I put these in before I do my calculation, I want to say if, oops. So I'm going to say in here, do a range check. And I'm going to say this, if, it's going to look pretty ugly, but if miles driven is less than min miles, or miles driven is greater than max miles, and that should be miles, not gallons. So if one of those things happened, I'm going to throw a new, where is it? Range? Argument out of range exception. All right, because I put in something that was invalid. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to check my gallons. I think I've come in here and I've checked all the boxes, so to speak, that I should handle, hopefully, everything that could go wrong in this program. If there's nothing in here, I get that. All right. If I put in something here, I'm getting that same error. If I put in something that's out of range, all right, still saying input string was not in the correct format. I didn't think it would say that, but it did. All right. And I can do the same thing in here. If I leave that empty, was not in the correct format. If I put in something non-numeric, was not in the correct format. If I put in something that Specify, that's what I wanted. Argument was out of range. All right, so what I've been trying to show you, and I did this very quickly, I want to run through the whole program. I put everything right inside my button click. Hey, that goes against the rules that we learned in chapter 6. I should have, done all this in different routines. I didn't. All right. So what are we doing here? We're setting up 4 constants. The minimum miles you can drive. If you don't drive at all, it doesn't make sense. Driving a negative amount doesn't make sense. So I just picked 1 as a minimum and just arbitrarily chose 1,000 as a maximum. Same thing with gallons. You have to at least use a gallon of gas. And I said that was the minimum and 50 was the maximum. Then these are my local variables. And of course, that will be the value in the first text box. And that will be the value in the second text box. And finally, that will be the value in the third text box. All right. I'm not going to put comments for those. I think those make sense. All right. So first we're coming in here and we're attempting to convert whatever was in text box 1 and text box 2 to their decimal equivalents. All right. Then we're doing a valid range check for miles driven. Then we're doing a valid range check for gallons used. And only if everything there succeeds do we do the MPG calculation. And put the calculated value in the last text box. All right, so what can go wrong? Well, you already saw that argument out of range. All right, there can be some kind of an argument. I think this is the one that's getting thrown. It's either this one or this one where it says was not in the right format. And you saw this when we attempted to divide by 0. Now, is this a perfect program? No, hell no. But what I'm trying to show you here is a way that we can go and try to look at everything that we're writing and validate it to make sure it's being written in the way it should be written. All right. And my hope is just by doing that and doing it quickly like that, it at least gave you an idea of how this stuff can be used. All right. So with that said, let me jump back into the book because there's only about 10 more pages in the chapter in the book. So I showed you the argument, the divide by 0, the format, and the divide, what was the other one? I think there was another one, but I don't remember what it was. All right. So that's a place that you can go to look that up, and it's just tutorialsteachers.com. Okay, I'm not saying that's great or it's terrible. Found another one, I didn't like it as much. And let's see. Let's just go back to the book now. So one thing that's kind of a staple, so to speak, in Muroc books is they like to write a future value application in virtually every book of theirs I've ever seen and have ever used. So when we look at that, for some reason. So let's see. So as we look through this, then this is the program. I'm not going to go through it right this second, but oh, okay. I guess we will. So what are they doing in here? This is in their calculate button. So what are we doing here? We're creating a bunch of variables, and they're the convert dot to decimal, very similar to what I did. All right. If any of these fail, we can have a format exception. Probably I can take the argument exception that I had and throw that, we remove that one. I think my program will still work. All right. Anything in this try area here, it's typically referred to as everything between the curly braces is what constitutes the try block. So if anything in the try block fails, the system goes and it starts saying, okay, is there a catch that matches? So it says, is the problem we just had a format exception? No. Is it an overflow exception? No. So we've got just a generic exception at the bottom. All right, that's just the way that they wrote it in here. In the example I didn't even have a generic exception at the bottom. I could have put one in. But the idea is then with this code that's right here, anything that's here in gray conceivably would fail. And rather than having it fail and having the program blow up, we have instead used exception handling, took control. So when something happened, I mean, we're not doing much here. We're just doing different exceptions. All right. But it gives us some control over the program is what I'm telling you. All right. Now, as if that wasn't enough, I believe this is the last thing that's discussed in here, and that's data validation. We've already been doing some of that. We've already been doing some data validation. What do I mean? Well, with both the miles driven and the miles per gallon, they had to be within a certain range. We were validating the data then. All right. So as it says here, when a user enters data, normally the data needs to be checked to make sure it's valid. This is known as data validation. Eventually, we will want to take what we put into a form, and when we click a button, try to put it into a database so we can keep that stuff so we've got a permanent record of it. Well, databases are very different animals, so to speak. And if you have a field, for example, that's called age, and you've set that up as an integer value or a whole number value, and you leave it blank, or you put in something in there that's not numeric, all right, the program will blow up unless you do some data validation. So that's what we're talking about in here is data validation. So they start here with a single entry. And as it says, when a user enters a text into a text box, you might want to perform several different types of validation. They show 3 here on the next page. This you can use to check to see if something's empty. Now I use the .trim on there also, but we've already written this one. This will check to see if what we put in there in this case was a valid decimal. Was it a decimal.try parse? All right. This checks for range. Very, again, similar to what I just showed you. Now, there's sort of a problem with this. All right, it's not an error, but wouldn't it be nice if I could write a generic routine where I could put in any text box value and see if it was a decimal.try parse? This routine, the way it's written, it'll only allow you to test that value. If I've got other text boxes, I either have to write a bunch of them or rewrite this in a different way. That's where that tag attribute that I showed you before is going to come in. All right. Same thing here when you want to check a range. Here wouldn't it be nice if we could put something generic in there So I could check the range and I could do it both. I could check the range both with the miles driven and with the gallons used. All right, that's what we're going to get to by the end of this chapter. We got about 10 more pages left in the chapter. So as it says here, if a user enters data, that data needs to be checked to make sure it's valid. That's what data validation is. When it's invalid, you, the programmer, need to handle it. All right, as it says, typically you'll want to display an error message. You may or may not want to give the user another chance to enter valid data. You might want to throw a default value in there. There's all sorts of different things you can do. They just showed you the 3 common types of validity checking. Number 1, make sure something isn't empty. Number 2, if it's a number, to make sure it's in a numeric format. And number 3, range checking. So if it's a number, set up a minimum and a maximum to make sure it falls between those. As it says, to test whether a value has been entered into a text box, you can check the text property. To test whether or not something contains valid numeric data, you can do a try parse. To text if it's within range, you can use if else's. I've actually shown you a little bit of all those. Now, but what we'd like to be able to do is write generic methods. Okay? So if you look right here, it says string value, string name, string value, string name. This thing right here that says name, all right, that's the tag value. All right, I'm going to go back and make some changes to the program that I wrote for you in just a moment. All right, but that is the tag value. Use it in there. You'll use it in here. You'll use it in here. Why does that even matter? Because you can write now generic routines that will handle different things for us. That's what's really nice. Plus, if we want, we can, it's possible that with whatever we write, we could have multiple errors and we can now flag the errors. Okay. And if we've got multiple errors, we can let the user know that she or he got or had multiple errors. All right. And that's what they show here on starting on 214. As it says, it shows how to code a method that validates multiple entries on a form. And what they do is they have one error message that they just keep adding to. Why might you want to do that? Well, if the user's done 3 things wrong, we could just check for one of them, get that to work, but then when we run it again, we get a different error. We could fix that and then run it again, and then we'd still have one more error. Doing it this way is going to show us all 3 of the errors that we have at the same time, so we can fix all of them. All right. As it says, you can use the validation method shown in the previous figures to validate multiple entries. Then if any of the entries are invalid, you can display a dialog box that describes the errors. All right. So they do come back at the end with their future value thing, and they come in there and they use validation. All right. So when you look right there, they're expecting that there's a monthly investment that's between $1 and $1,000. We put in something that's out of range. All right. The interest rate, you might look at that and go, well, what's wrong with that? They put in the percent sign. And years they left blank. So they are writing one generic routine that regardless of how many inputs we have, it'll flag every message that we have for each one of the inputs. And that's what they're showing in here. Now, as you can see, yeah, it's getting kind of big. The more complex your program becomes, typically the longer the program becomes. All right. So notice it says here, try, and then it says if valid data. Well, what is that? That's down here. Here's where they checked all that stuff. They wanted to check to see if was the value a decimal, was it within range, etc. All right. And then they write each one of the routines. And that's it. Now, when I say that's it, I don't mean to shortchange it. This, out of probably all the chapters we've had so far, had the most new stuff, the most different stuff in it. All right. And rather than going back and rewriting that miles per gallon program, rather than doing it right now, which I could do, but knowing me, I'd probably screw it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix the programs I wrote for you today. I'm going to fix the odd or even, and I'm going to fix the miles per gallon program, and then I'm going to rewrite the miles per gallon program. All right. And we will look at those tomorrow. Let's talk about what else we have in here. Okay. Now, I don't probably even have to do this, even though I'm going to anyway. And that is, let's see, give me just a second here. I'm going to change my share in just a second. Almost ready. Just give me one more second here. All right. So let me change my share. We will be done today by around 11. All right. What's going to be due next? What's your next set of assignments then? All right. And again, I am asking you all to do the written tests. If you make an effort at them, they're worth 20 points. If you make good effort and most of your answers are correct, you're going to get 15 or more points. All right. So you will do first the written test for chapter 6. I would recommend you go through those first. If you don't, that's your call. All right. Then next, I would recommend that you go through the written test for chapter 7. All right. Again, the order in which you do these basically is up to you, but I think it'd probably help if you did the written tests first. All right. So, and I know I just keep coming in here and changing my share. I get it. All right. You'll notice that for chapter 6, we've got create a simple calculator. Does that sound familiar? For chapter 6, we've got this create a simple calculator. All right. Very similar to ours, except I'll change my operator so it looks like that one. All right. I'll make it look like that. All right. And we've already done this as far as create it. All righty. And then for chapter 7, they want you to add exception handling. So what I'll do is for tomorrow, I'll go and make the changes so that my program basically looks like the one here. I probably did too much. All right, so I'll redo that one so it looks like this one. You will be still responsible for doing 6-1 and 7-1, but I'll do them with you, for you, however you want to look at that. On your own, you will do programs 6-2 and 7-2. This is your homework. So your homework part, I've already shown you the written tests. And for the homework, again, for the homework, it is extra 6-2, extra 7-2, extra 6-1, and extra 7-1. This one says that income tax thing that we did before, you will put in an income and it will show you the tax that's owed. So you do that for 6-2, and for 7-2, you add some validation. All right. So again, you will, for your homework portion of chapters 6 and 7, you will do extra 6-1, extra 6-2, extra 7-1, and extra 7-2. Next, for the chapter 6 labs. All right, the first one here says, write a GUI application that contains an array of the following fortune cookie sayings. All right, and randomly selects two different phrases. You know what? That's a good one to do as a class because we don't even talk about arrays until the next chapter. So it'll give me a chance to introduce arrays to you. So we can do that one tomorrow as well. LB3. And then what's left? Write a program that determines the eligibility for college applicants. This is very similar to what we looked at before. This was in an earlier assignment, so you've already done this one. All right, so I'll expect you to do number 4. The vowel count, you can do that one too. And this thing for painting a room. I'd like you to try all 3 of these. So LB4, LB5, and LB6. We'll do LB3 tomorrow as a class. And then finally, for the chapter 7 labs, what do we have here? Create a GUI application to calculate a person's body mass index. Let's do that one as a class tomorrow. All right. And this next one assumes that you're working for a company that's doing ordering, and you can have exceptions. And on this decoder ring, Mr. Smith, while he was here, was into Pokemon and all sorts of stuff like that. You don't have to do this one. All right, I don't like these encoding and decoding. So you will be responsible for LB1, which we'll do as a class tomorrow, the BMI program, and for LB2, the order exceptions. And again, that one you will do. Now, Grant, you're the only one here. I don't mean to put you on the spot too much. Is there anything I just went over as far as the homework that doesn't make sense?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So last thing then. Change this one more time. That's what I want. All right, so this is the thing I went over at the beginning of class. All right. I'm taping the lecture right now. It'll be out there in just a little bit. It'll also be out on my YouTube channel later today. Now, I don't like it when I do some select homework problems to put them on YouTube. I'm going to anyway. All right. It's going to be my responsibility then to go around at the end of the semester in case Mr. Gudmested teaches this class in spring and I don't want that to be out there where people saw my lectures that they'd get some of the homework done. I'm not supposed to do that. He may or may not even like the fact that I'm doing select problems with you. All right. And I'm not saying, oh, I don't care if he likes it or not. I very much value his opinion. But we're still at the point where I think that some people in the class could use the extra help. All right. So today I talked about the chapters 1 through 3 homework. If you got an email from me yesterday on Sunday, all right, that I was missing something from your homework, I expect you to get it in and get it in as soon as possible. All right. How will you know? If you go out to insiderankin.org, and on insiderankin.org, if you go to the gradebook tab, all right, if you've got work for chapters 1, 2, and 3, and what was there? There was the chapter 1 written test, the chapter 2 written test, the chapter 3 written test, the chapter 1 through 3 homework, and the chapter 1 through 3 labs. Everybody's got a grade for the first hands-on test. But on those other 5 things, the written test, the homework, and the labs, if you don't have a grade in there, if it's blank, that means that I tried to open up your homework and either there was nothing there or it was in a format where I couldn't open it. So it is your responsibility to get something in. All right. We also talked about the fact that for chapters 4 and 5, since the work wasn't due until midnight this morning, I'm going to try very much to start grading that. And if at a minimum, I want to grade your hands-on test that you took last week and have that available for you by tomorrow. After that, we quickly talked a little bit about tutors. Again, if you are falling behind and you would wish to have a tutor, email me as soon as you can and just say, I'd like to get a tutor. I will talk to my class this afternoon, the second year people, and see if anyone wants to be a tutor. The bad news about that is my student who tutored last semester, he's already gotten a full-time job as a programmer. All right. So I would think, doesn't have the time to do that. And I understand that. In addition, if you're doing well in this class and you're like, I get it, and you want to tutor, then send me an email. I can try. There's that you've got to fill out. Why? Because you get $10 an hour, and you got to fill out a bunch of stuff that you. If you want to have a tutor, there's no paperwork to fill out. Nothing. All right. You get $10 an hour to tutor if you did. All right. After we did that, we went over the calculator or the GUI calculator app. That said, all right, that said, there are still problems with that app. I'm going to try to fix them. And maybe that's the one that we use for tomorrow. I don't know. All right. Then we went over chapter 7 and I bounced back and forth between the calculator, console, and GUI app. Plus, we looked at another app that I created on the fly, 2 of them really. One to see that if it was odds or evens, and another one that we just kind of, again, did on the fly to see if for a miles per gallon program. All right. Now we just finished up by going what is due for the homework, labs, and written tests for chapters 6 and 7, which is due next Sunday. So tomorrow, as it says, we'll go over some selected lab and homework problems. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. And that is, I mean, I make my share of mistakes and probably more than my share. But I made the decision, be it conscious or unconscious or subconscious, that I don't have any notes in front of me. All the notes in front of me are from my afternoon class. I have no C# notes in front of me. So when I'm creating a new program, I'm doing it 100% from scratch. So not only can things go wrong, but eventually things will go wrong. I mean, you can pretty much just count on that happening. I don't do it on purpose, but hey, chances are things are going to go wrong with you also when you're working on this stuff. So tomorrow we'll go and we'll look at that calculator thing again. I will have the other ones cleaned up for you. So I'll have the clear and the exit buttons working for the numbers program, even or odd, and I will have it working for the miles per gallon also. And again, we will do a few problems. We'll look at the calculator, which is 6-1 and 6-2, all right, on your homework. And we will look at, for your labs, like I said, we'll look at the BMI one and maybe another one too. All right. Then Wednesday will be lab for the entire period. I believe I've told you this already, but I do want you to know that when I give you a lab period like that, I'm online the entire time. There's nothing to tape. All right. But I'm online the entire time. So if you're ever working on a lab and you've got a problem, just email me. If we have to, we can literally do a team session on the fly. All right. Otherwise, we can, put electronic communication back and forth from one another. So tomorrow selected problems, Wednesday lab. Thursday will be a pretest. All right. And as always, I'll probably give you the pretest on Wednesday as far as handing it out to you. And you hopefully, since it's lab on Wednesday, all right, I will give you until 9:30 on Thursday. So the first hour and a half, basically. And then I will go over the pretest problems with you. Friday will also be a lab. And as it says, as of right now, unless something changes, that will put our next hands-on test will be due or will be taken a week from today. So you will have it by 8 a.m. and it will be due by 11:59 seconds. All right. So leave you with these two things. One, and I've said them both already, but look through your grade book on Inside Rankin. If something is missing and you think, well, that isn't missing, then contact me. Send me an email at jpscott@rankin.edu. Let me know. I'll go back and look at it. All right. That's the first thing. Okay. And also going along with that, if you have questions, concerns, I always put this in here. So if there's something that's not making sense to you, I don't want to ask, or don't assume anything. And you maybe have heard this kind of thing before, but I actually do agree with this. There is no such thing as a stupid question. There's actually a pretty good chance if you've got a question about something, so do other people. So please don't be afraid to ask it. If nothing else, email's private in that way that if you send me an email and say, hey, maybe I should know this, but that's fine. Like I said, I'm willing to work with any of you. If you put out the effort, I'll work with you to make sure that it works. All right. Grant, I take for granted that you don't have any other questions. So we will meet up again tomorrow at 8:05. And again, at that time, I not only want to go over those selected problems, but I'm hoping to have as much stuff graded from chapters 4 and 5 as I possibly can. All right. Have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.